Anaxagoras takes these seeds or these roots that Empedocles was talking about, and he's talking about them more like elements in a modern scientific way of how we would talk about elements. And I don't know how many elements are on the periodic table now. When I was a kid, I think there were about 30, but I think there's quite a bit more that have been discovered because some elements are super ephemeral and they only last for like a split second. But through some of the experiments they've done in like atom splitting and things like that, we've discovered things that we've never seen before in the universe or in the cosmos. But for the Greeks, they were going with these four basic ones. And instead of the life and death principle that Empedocles adhered to, I like to call Anaxagoras the Captain and Tennille philosopher. And I know this dates probably everyone besides, or predates everyone besides Wayne in here, but Captain and Tennille were a pop band in the 70s, and one of their big hits was called Love Will Keep Us Together. And that's how Anaxagoras saw the elements. Love combined the elements into new life forms, and they would grow and accomplish, but hate would tear things apart and break them back down, and they would return to the earth. So love brings things together, hate divides, and break things apart. Just like in Empedocles, this life or eros principle brings things into being, and strife or thanatos, death, brings things back into their primal base forms. And once again, I think this is so incredibly brilliant. Remember, this is before microscopes, this is before telescopes. This is simply these old Greek guys observing the world and trying to understand how we can get these elaborate things formed, but then when they die, they break down and dissipate until nothing remains, at least that we can visibly see. And they had this idea of these four elements. And even though in modern physics we believe, or chemistry we believe in many more than four today, the Greeks are the one that kind of started us on this trajectory and way of thinking. And so let's take an example. The nautilus shell, right? An amazing, intricate, like Fibonacci sequence shell that grows. Well, the idea is, with Empedocles or Anaxagoras, with Empedocles, when life comes to that creature, with that, and same thing, sperm and egg, right? It starts a new nautilus, but contained within the DNA is the blueprint for how to create that living creature and that elaborate shell in which it lives. And that creature somehow is able to take from its seabed environment calcium and carbonate and other particles from the ocean floor with which to construct this elaborate, detailed Fibonacci shell. And then it takes other elements to create its flesh. And when it dies, these elements will break down, go back into the ocean, and then become available for the next living thing that needs them. The baby growing in the womb, right? It starts with a sperm and an egg, but when those come together and join, that zygote grows into an embryo being nourished by its mother in the womb. And so the mother is taking in things like fruits, vegetables, meat, grains, and those are being converted in her body, traveling through her bloodstream, through the umbilical cord to the child, who is then somehow taking those elements and growing things like flesh and organs, blood, bones, teeth, hair. It's all coming out of these elements, and that baby, if all goes well, will be born, it will grow, it will mature, and eventually die. And when it dies, all those particles or elements will then break down and go back into the world from which it came. And for Anaxagoras, love brings things together, hate, strife brings things apart, breaks them back down into their elements. But here's the thing about Anaxagoras. Like Heraclitus, he believed there was this principle at work that ordered the bringing of things together. And he called this principle the nous. and that is Nous. And we can translate nous into English as like mind or spirit. But we're not just talking about like a brain or human mind. We are talking like cosmic consciousness. Almost to the point of where like the cosmos becomes the body and the nous becomes the soul of the universe, or the mind of the universe. So the Greeks, even though they're materialist, they're thinking in these really far-reaching, abstract sorts of ways. And I'm assuming Anaxagoras thought the nous was material. I'm not sure about Heraclitus if he thought the logos was material, but these were materialists, so I would assume so. But I don't think we really get into this distinction, like this body-mind distinction, until a little bit later with the Greeks. But we do have this nous, and later, that is the word that gets used in the New Testament in Koine Greek when the scriptures are talking about the mind. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but the Greeks believed, and this wasn't Anaxagoras, this is later, so I'll save it when we get to Plato. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But nous, it's the word used in our school verse for this semester in Romans 12:2. Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your nous. That is the Greek word that we have translated as mind. And it goes all the way back to 5th century BCE with these Greek philosophers. And it means a lot more than just a human mind. This is like the logos. It's like cosmic consciousness. It permeates the cosmos and it orders all things. It brings things into existence and it returns them back to the elements from which they came.